All right, at this point, we're going to turn our attention back to the header. And there's a few more things we want to put in there. We've got register nav menus and WP nav menu. These are going to be used to create a navigation menu and then to display it in our theme. And then body class is a template tag that is kind of jumping into the next section, but it's so helpful to have as we're building out a template that I just want to throw it in here so that you can see it and include it going forward. So let's start off just here on the codex. We've got register nav menus, and it's going to take an array of locations. And these are going to be all of the different locations in our theme where menus can go. So when you create a menu in WordPress, you'll see that it has options. You could say, oh, this is the header menu or the footer menu. Well, these have to be manually created in the theme for it to work. And we can see down here in the example that you have, in this example, plugin buddy mobile one, and we name it, and then a footer menu. So we only have to pass it two things. We've got to pass it the kind of code or short name, the programmable name, and then we've got to give it a description, and that's what will appear in the admin area, and then this is what we'll call in our template to make sure that everything's working. Now, once we have that set up, then we come into our template and we use WP Nav menu, which takes a bunch of different arguments. And these arguments are all of the different arguments that you could use for setting up a menu. And it has a lot of different stuff here. In fact, I'm just going to jump over to this little code snippet here, which is taken from a great article you could read in more depth. And it just has a little bit more information than what you're going to find in the codex. And in the codex, we don't see all of this put out. And I think it's just a little bit easier to see this way. So you are not going to use all of these. These are just here for demonstration purposes. And the location of the theme. So if you want to say, okay, this is my header theme or this is my footer theme location. If you want to say use a specific menu, so not giving them the option, you just hard code and know that it's going to be there. You could wrap it inside of a container. You can assign classes or IDs to that container so that your navigation is going to appear inside of it. And then when you get down to the menu itself, you could give it class and IDs. You're probably not going to need an instance where you're just saving this to a variable instead of displaying it. So echo is going to be true by default, and fallback is going to automatically load the normal pages of your site if none are available. So if you wanted to customize that, you could do that. If you need any custom code before or after specific links, so if you wanted to throw in something there, what you're going to wrap all your items with. So this is some really fancy code that will automatically give you if there are any IDs assigned, any classes assigned, and then the actual item itself. You can control the depth. So this is going to say like, okay, 0, I could have no children, or 1, I could have 1 level of children in my navigation, or 2, I could have 2 levels of children. You're probably not going to be customizing that too much, but I do find sometimes it's helpful to hard code. If you know that a menu cannot handle, for some reason, child pages, well, then you can automatically hard code that here and limit it. By default, it'll just let you do whatever you set up in the admin area. Finally, Walker is a little bit outside the scope of this class, but that allows you to customize how menus appear. So by default, it has a certain structure of unordered list and list items and anchor tags. But sometimes when you're working with something like Bootstrap, where you need your markup to look a certain way in the menu, you have to override that. And you could explore a Walker class a little bit more, something probably we'll mention late in the course before closing out, but something we don't really need to do. We could do a lot with CSS and not have to customize how WordPress displays them. But that's what that last parameter is. So that's the WP Nav menu, and that's going to go inside of our template. Finally, we have body class, and this we're not going to pass any arrays to, or any information to, but you can add your own. And what this is going to do is go in the header and give us a bunch of different data. So it will output, hey, what page are we on, what template we're using, if the user is logged in or logged out. And this is so helpful, especially for CSS and styling different pages and things, or figuring out what page you're on. And so it's used just like this. Inside of our body tag, we put body class. So those are the 3 things we're going to be adding. Let's jump back into our header now and add these things in. All right, so we'll kind of go in reverse order here. The first one we could add is PHP body class. And I mess this up sometimes. I put class like this and then put it inside of here. That is not correct. It will automatically create the class, and then if you want to pass it any additional ones, you could do it that way, pass an array in or pass a single one, and it will add those on. You could also control it programmatically with hooks, which we could explore later as well. So this is body class. Just to jump back in, if we look at our theme now and open it up, we could see we've got class customize support. If we go back to the home page of our site and pop it up, and this is still not working. You know what I think we did here was, yeah, we still have the splash page header loading, so multiple header issues. Let's go ahead and clear that out so we're always just working from the main header. Ah, there we go. That's what I was looking for. So now notice if I'm on the home page of the site, we can see that I'm on the home, logged in, the admin bar is there. We get some different information. If I were to come back into the dashboard and open up a specific page, then you can see page template default, the page, the specific page ID, whether they're logged in, all of this stuff going on here. This is really helpful. So that's what the body class is going to do, and it's dynamic. It changes page to page. Super helpful to have. Now, in order to add our menu, we've got to come into our functions.php and add some more code down here. So after we load up our CSS, let's come down, give ourselves a little bit of space. And now we are going to add our menus. So we'll say register menu locations. And this is where we're going to use our function register nav menus. Cool. Just like that. And then it's going to take one argument that is an array. Well, we'll do it this way. And the first piece of information we'll have in that array is going to be what we want to call it. So we'll just call this our main menu, and it's going to appear as our main menu. You may change those names depending on, your exact needs, etc. And then we will do escape HTML just because it's a little bit safer. Sorry, escape HTML underscore. And we'll come back and talk about all these tags. So I'm just going to use them at this point, and we'll explain why I'm doing it this way. But again, it has to do with accessibility, translation, things like that. And we have to tell it this is a WP hierarchy theme. Oh, and nothing at the end there. So that is what we're going to have. You could leave a comma if we were to have multiple menus. So if we wanted a footer menu again, then this is what that would look like. We're not adding those, but in your own theme, you may want to set up multiple locations. So that's setting up register nav menus. And just to test this out, if we come into our customizers and into menu location, we could see that main menu is appearing there. Oh, I'm sorry. These are the different menus that come with it, and the menu location is the main menu. So main menu location, and then there were already some menus set up here. I had set up one previously, and then it just comes with some testing menus and things like that. So that is the setup there. So we have the location working, but it's not really showing up on the page yet. So let's hop back into our code and look at how to do that. So in order to add our menu into our navigation here, we're going to customize a few things. So first of all, I want to give some general markup here. I'm going to give a nav element, and I'll give it site navigation. And I'm also going to give it a class of main navigation, and then a role of navigation. And this is for accessibility reasons. And the ID, some of this I am borrowing from Bootstrap. I'm sorry, underscores. Underscore, again, is one of the starter themes you could use. It's used in a lot of default WordPress themes. So I kind of like to follow the conventions of some of their class and ID naming conventions and just general structure. So that's where this is coming from. So now that I have this markup the way I want, inside of this is where I'm going to put my WP nav menu. So I'll say PHP WP nav menu, and then this takes an array. So because we could pass it, so you could set this up a few different ways. first of all, you could set it up where we just put everything into this area here. So I could say, give me an array. And the only thing I'm going to add at this point is tell it what this theme location is. So I'm going to say, okay, throw in a menu here, whatever is assigned to main menu in my setup. And I could pass this array directly in like this. Now this is fine if we just have one, especially since I could probably break this down and write it on one line. But because the WordPress standards really suggest that we break things up for readability, I would write it this way. Now there's one more way we could write this, and I'll just indent this a bit inside of our PHP block, and that would be to set up a variable called args, which is going to be an array. And inside of here is where we would put this. So down in our nav menu, because we already have those arguments set up as an array, we could just do this. And so this is a little bit more common, especially if you wanted to have a bunch of different options here. Again, you could add a bunch of different options. We could actually create all this from setting up the container IDs and classes, etc. So that's something that is probably a better approach, and we'll leave it this way going forward. So now let's come in and test out if it's working. All right, we could see here that we've got our home, we've got our sample page portfolio, and we could even click through this. Now, you might not have this set up, in which case you want to come in, create a main menu. Here's what mine looks like. I've got a sample page portfolio. You don't have to set this up. We'll look at this later. But do create a parent page and some children pages so that you could see how that's working, and a blog section. So with this done, I'm going to also switch to using a static front page. So before, we've been looking at latest posts, and I'm going to switch that to being my home page. Now this isn't going to make a difference. It's all still using the index.php, and we're going to come back to adding the loop, but we could see that this is the fallback for everything. So that's what I wanted to add to our header now. We're coming along, and before we look at too much more, let's just pause at this point and add a little bit more of our general markup in and talk about porting over markup into a WordPress theme.